Hello, warriors. Dr. Diane Kaiser here. Welcome back to another episode of the Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast. Today, we're going to do another Truth Unveiled. We're going after PFIZER, the vaccines, the undercover investigations, and I'm going to interview double agent Justin Leslie, a friend of mine, and somebody who you're going to want to hear the story of. In fact, his stories from the past few years are really crazy and intense to say the least. I would never have it any other way on this show. But isn't that the truth for most of us since COVID? So we're going to get into a behind the scenes interview that will either have your blood boiling, your body covered in goosebumps, or both. And as I always say, I hope it inspires both, because the path to righteousness, to godly righteousness, and to awakening and to passion and truth is anger. So we're going to talk about the truth today. We're going to talk about controlled opposition, Bohemian Grove, PFIZER coming down to its knees, and more. Let's dive in. You're listening to Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast, and I'm your hostess, Diane Kaiser, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, former pro soccer player, transformational leader, holistic healer, and life purpose coach, helping you and your business awaken to your full potential. We are a transformation tribe of visionaries empowering passion-quenching, heart-centered advice to wellness warrior leaders on self-love, nutrition, mindset, and divorcing perfectionism. Our mission is to help you laugh your way to a sexy belly, love your way to vitality, and live your life with purpose by sharing real talk and truth drops that will help you cleanse your body, heal your hormones, and ignite your life. Side effects of this podcast may include all-day energy, happy hormones, perfect poops, increased confidence, becoming your own best healer, and catching the self-love virus. There's currently no vaccination to protect you from this and no known cure. In most cases, listeners experience a strong desire to accept new challenges, ditch toxic people, follow their heart, and dance like no one's watching. If you experience moods happier than usual, live it unapologetically and share with your social media friends immediately. All right, warriors. This one is going to go deep. I'm excited to talk about a lot of the things that Justin is more prepared than I am to refer to. Let's see, it was about 8 years ago that I learned, maybe 10, about what Bohemian Grove is. And you guys might be thinking, it just sounds like a Hollywood flick, or no, stick around for this, because these are the kinds of things that we need to know that exist so that you can know what to stay away from. What is the dark? Because that is a path to light. So Justin Leslie, welcome to the Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast.
Diane, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Let's get right to it, my friend.
Let's get in. I appreciate, we were talking behind the scenes about your commitment to the truth and the truth rising. And, that's what I am all about here. And not just the truth, but also how to transform from it. So if you guys are listening in, I see some eyeballs here who are tuning in live. Welcome to the show. Great to have you. The last time we did this with Melissa McAtee and we were talking about PFIZER, we had, I think it was like 400 people tuning in live. And so if you guys are tuning in live, we'd love to hear from you. If there's any comments or questions, even just, high-fiving us and, honoring Justin for the work he's doing, for me having him on the show, or if you're wanting to have him on the show, reach out, just comment below and share this stuff, because this is how we get the information and, more importantly, the truth out there for transformation. So Justin, let's go through your timeline, because I first heard of you from my friend Shauna, and she had mentioned I should have you on the show like 2 months ago. And then it wasn't until 2 weeks ago when I had Melissa on, and she mentioned you about the germ theory versus virus theory, the bug theory. I'm all about the terrain theory. I'm so excited that you are too, and we'll get into that today, that viruses don't exist the way that they tell us. So we're already on the same page, and that makes me really excited to ask the first question, which is, how did you get to whistleblowing the way that you are now? How did this happen, and what is your message, your main message?
Great question. It's definitely been a gradual experience, I'd say, to go from believing in viruses, getting to the terrain model, and really accepting that you've been lied to that this much. It takes a special someone, I think, to realize that they're not better than anybody, and we've all been lied to. That's the reality that I'm presenting to people at this point. And it's not like I'm not afraid to talk to people that believe in viruses. It's another level of conversation that if two people are on the same page, then it really you're able to dig deep. So I hope that makes sense. And yeah, I got to see inside the walls of Pfizer and inside the walls of alternative media, and it really grew into a rabbit hole. My life grew into a rabbit hole essentially at this point, and I almost felt like, okay, am I expected to stomach this information for the rest of my life, or speak out and help people? Because the way that we evolve as a species, as men and women, is learning from human experience. And so that's why I'm doing this. It's not for money, it's not for fame, it's not for this or that. It's because I've had to deal with this weight on my shoulders, and essentially sharing the story has really been a release of that, and it's helpful to move forward in that sense. So I hope that makes sense, Diane.
It does, Justin. I'm going to honor you with a quote, which is, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And you're a good man. And as I'm just going to say this as a woman. Okay. I said this one day on SGT Report with Dane Wigington, who's also a whistleblower. You probably know of him on geoengineering, chemtrails, weather modification, HARP technology, and the fact that they are chemtrailing us with toxins and destroying the planet, the firmament, whatever it is. I would lend to the Bible. Speaking of truth, CIA, NASA, all controlled op, all just like bunch of bullshit. I think that's another one of those ones I've had. I have Flat Earth Dave in my show because I'm just like, we got to question everything, you guys. Like, how do we know 100% anything, right? So
I,
question everything.
I love
So
it.
yeah. So as a woman, I just want to honor you because there's a lot of women who are feeling, I'll say this from a vulnerable place from within them. We don't have a lot of men who are standing up like you to protect us. And I'm not saying that like we're damsels in distress, but the men and women model, which is the model I believe in, is
It,
that we each have our role. So we need more men like you. Bravo to come out with the truth and protect us, and all of us, and women do the same. So thank you.
Thank you. It's also for the future generations, in the sense of I was in a position, working directly on the COVID vaccine at a young age, and I knew something was wrong, and so that was the driving force. Is something's wrong. This is going to be going into kids, and I mean, not that I didn't care about the adults. It's just adults also can make decisions for
Right.
themselves. A lot of people can argue like, oh, the information was out there if you didn't want to get vaccinated or not, but it's really for the kids, and the women as well. Women and kids are the 100% driving force behind this story, and we really do need strong men in this world. What's the quote? The strong men create good times, and then it becomes this cycle where strong men always need to come forward and stand up for right and wrong at this point. And that's really a conversation that we'll get into about like God's law and spiritual law,
Thank you.
in the sense of where I come from with my whistleblowing, because some people have tried to pin me down and say, Justin, you are not worthy of speaking out against this COVID vaccine because of the nuances of state statutes and things of that nature, which is all portrayed in my documentary Project Whistleblower that everyone can check out at justintegrity.net.
Yep, thank you. So you have been actually exposed to what courageous warriors who stand up for truth is not. And that's also what I know we're going to talk about today is that somebody that you know, which we'll talk about further into the show, had the opportunity to help a lot of people expose the truth behind, I don't even call them vaccines because they are not, they're bioweapons, period. They had the opportunity to share that with the world and they did not. And I'm going to share a story, you guys, on this show as well that I never have on controlled op as well that I've experienced. So you don't know controlled op, which he'll define that a little bit later until you experience it yourself and go, wait a minute. Then you want to tell the story. So that's what Justin's doing here today. Let's start with your story with Pfizer. You said you started at an early age working for Pfizer. So you started when, what was the purpose, and what did you find out that the people need to hear?
I started at the age of 23, and
That's so young.
Was in the middle of a master's program at Rutgers. I couldn't find a job out of college due to, the COVID hiring freezes and everything. It was really strange times, so I jumped into a master's program pretty much right away. Wanted to do research on this, disease that I was diagnosed with at the age of 9.5 called tuberous sclerosis complex. And that's a whole other conversation about what TSC really is, and I really probably attribute it to a vaccine injury. But at this point, after fully waking up to everything, but I wanted to do research on this disease, and I was absolutely miserable waking up during the COVID hysteria. The vaccines weren't even rolled out yet during my master's program, but everything happened so quickly. And my first semester is really what I went 0 to 100 in my awakening process. In the sense of the beginning, I didn't really know why I was going into biomedical sciences for a master's program, and then by the end of the first semester, I was like, okay, I'm miserable. I'm doing all this Zoom university, like taking these courses for what, a regurgitation of my undergrad program, and then
Mm.
started applying to I applied to Pfizer, applied to a handful of other pharmaceutical companies, not because I didn't have a vendetta against Pfizer, other than I say I have a vendetta for truth, and I was offered this role to work with them as a formulation analytical scientist, and it took 2 interviews, and I took the job within 24 hours of the offer. I had 24 hours. I took it at the 23rd, just because I was so unsure about the situation. Other than, I'm like, okay, this seems to be some opportunity from God to, you know, insert myself and see what it is like inside the walls of Pfizer. From this first-hand point of view of someone who completely disagrees with the situation that's playing out. That's what was going on. Is I wrote a paper about how COVID was basically a complete scam. I wasn't fully there with virology being a complete scam at that point, but I knew that COVID was not isolated, and I essentially was saying that it was the flu rebranded. And then, now it's escalated to, okay, all of virology is a complete scam, but still, like that, regardless, by the time I was 23, I knew that this entire thing was a scam. As COVID-19. COVID-19 literally stands for Certificate of Vaccination ID, and then the first letter of the alphabet is A, and then the ninth is I. 19 AI. They made this whole thing all about the vaccines, and then the advancement of AI. Like what's going on with this potential nanotechnology, graphene oxide, etc. That is potentially in these shots that is wreaking havoc on the masses. So sorry, I went on a huge tangent.
No, it's okay. I think there's like, it's interesting if you break down COVID and what it is, and there's so many like breakdowns of the word and iterations and like the numerology. If you're really looking at it, it's like all satanic, and there's 060606 and luciferase and all kind. I mean, it's so obvious, but
Yeah.
not to everybody. And at this point, if people have not seen how obvious it is, that what decision that they made, and haven't forgiven themselves, then I dare say that many of you have not yet done the necessary due diligence to detox your bodies, thinking, oh, well, I feel fine now. Not realizing these are slowly releasing payloads of bioweapons inside of your body. So you still need to be detoxing and clearing parasites, because these things could take 3+ years to open up and destroy the inside of the body. We're seeing turbo cancers from it now. So there's a lot of breakdowns of that. So Justin, you were hired at 23. What were you in charge of with Pfizer, and what was it that you saw there specifically? And what is it, if you were to take us on a tour of what you were seeing through your own lenses, what was it that you witnessed? And then did you quit there, or what happened next?
So to make a long story short, I was in formulations. So formulations has to do with research and development and stability studies. So that's what I was doing on a small scale manufacturing level, where I was on a analytical team on a small scale level lab, so there was a small scale manufacturing team that essentially would create flu vaccines, self-amplifying RNA flu vaccines, modified RNA vaccines, and the COVID-19 vaccine that went into everybody. So I was doing controlled stability study assays, literally just to test percent encapsulation, concentration, percent integrity of the RNA, were the three main things that I would do. And then that's I was a low level employee, so I was really just on a small scale level testing those things and making sure that I was following SOPs and making sure that that the vaccine was going to be able to be scaled up into a large scale setting. So I joined Pfizer actually March of 2021, so the vaccines were already rolled out at that point too, so it's not like I had any ins like before COVID was, or before the vaccines rolled out. I got in essentially to try and stop the bleeding,
Mm.
from my perspective on like not staying on the sidelines. And so to get to more of like the nitty gritty in the sense of where I was seeing bad things, I suppose, or like seeing things worth blowing the whistle on would be, it really all kind of started to uh, evolve when I reached out to Project Veritas. So I was paying attention to the alternative media cycles. I was paying attention to, listening to XYZ podcast, you name it, that was talking bad about the vaccines. I was probably listening to it, in the sense of, don't take this thing. And I was probably the only person in my building, I'll say this, that was really questioning what was going on with the vaccines. And then I reached out to Project Veritas actually prior to even accepting the job. I reached out to them and said, hey, like this could be an opportunity to like really, blow the whistle on the vaccine. Oh, that we can hop to a video soon. But let me just finish this explanation and then we can hop. It's okay, Paula. We can do one of the trailers or talk about my manager or Ramin. Those are really the bombshell videos that were sat on. But I essentially reached out to Project Veritas and they finally wanted to work with me once I sent them a video and pictures of me holding the COVID-19 vaccine itself. And I said, Pfizer Insider, I'm a whistleblower. I want to help, and that was a cry for help essentially in the sense of like, it's a cry for help for me to like help people. I'm like, I want to do something, not stay on the sidelines and, make an impact for the world.
Yeah. What did you see? Like, what was it that you saw that you were trying to show them? Is that the video that you have?
Yeah, so we can get into it. Paula, there's the Conwall, and then do you want to watch them back to back or watch Conwall's first and then talk about it and then we can do Ramin's?
I'm not sure what they are, so perhaps just show whatever Conwall is first. Yeah, thanks, Paula. And so our producer, Paula.
Video here is from October 6th, 2021. I had a meeting with my manager, Conwall Gill, a principal scientist working on the vaccine formulation at Pfizer. In this meeting, I asked her if it was okay to give people another experimental injection regarding the booster shots, or if it was a drive for money.
So are we?
But we are still.
Like, do we know that? Like, I mean, just thinking like ethically, like, is it okay to like give people another experimental injection? Like, are we sure it's going to be safe and effective? Or are we just rolling these out because we want to roll them out for money? Like,
yeah, this is a real-time data that we are generating. We don't even know. When we started vaccinating people, we had no idea how it's going to look like. Yeah. mRNA vaccines have been there for 50 years, no, but nothing made to clinical. Why? Because mRNA vaccines have been known to have side effects.
Right. But
Moderna has been working on it for 10 years. This is not the new thing, right? But why it did not reach trial was because of all these side effects. We, Pfizer and Moderna, used the emergency and the pandemic to kind of get through it now.
Okay.
But, we didn't, but even CDC noted we
so
don't
it
have
can
data.
never get FDA approved until until we had this emergency, right? Like we had to try something new. So, but why didn't we try like a vaccine formulation that has been effective in the past, like with egg yolk or something that they used with flu, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so we here did not do it because we already have collaboration with BioNTech on flu before actually COVID happened. So mRNA. So what a story behind we starting on this, because BioNTech guy Ugur Sahin, the BioNTech CEO, he called Catherine Jensen.
Sahin.
Yeah, he called Catherine Jensen and he's like, hey, I have this technology, but I don't have resources to make it big. So Catherine was like, well, we had a collaboration in place before for flu. So we wanted to give it a shot. It is a new mRNA thing. Nobody knew anything about it. We never had it. We never had this. Everything is just fresh from last year.
Like learning on the fly.
So it was on the fly. Pandemic, just roll it out. There was no time to think. It was a time to act.
Who Conwell was mentioning in this clip is Catherine Jensen, the former head of vaccine research and development at PFIZER.
I'm Catherine Jansen. I develop vaccines which help millions of people around the world to be protected from nasty and deadly infections. Currently, I'm developing a vaccine candidate to help prevent COVID-19.
Oh, am I there?
You're a little frozen.
Oh, why am I frozen? Why am I frozen?
Your computer did Botox?
Should I reload?
I'm not sure, Paula. Perhaps, yeah, leave and come back, and I'll just comment on that. So that Justin's a little bit frozen, and we'll bring him back on. So what I'm seeing in this is the same thing that many of us were trying to share with the world, and we're gaslit from our colleagues and friends and family about what was really happening with the jab. Which is that it wasn't tested. They didn't give it proper time. They haven't done their full disclosure and studies on it, just like breast implants. Like I always say, every breast implant manufacturer is in violation of their pre-market approvals, which is to say they've never, ever done the research to see if it's safe or not. So there's something that you guys can watch. I'm buying myself some time until Justin comes back on and he's not frozen. There's something called The Bleeding Edge. And it's a documentary that is on my BitChute channel. I put a lot of my resources for documentaries that perhaps you'd otherwise pay for, that you maybe have never seen. So go watch that on my BitChute channel. If you go to dianekaiser.com/ignite, you can see all the links for all of my social media places like BitChute, like Rumble, where we're broadcasting this live now, like Twitter, etc., as well as all kinds of free resources like Warrior Cleanse Free Module, etc., etc. So go to dianekaiser.com/ignite, and you'll see that on there so that you can go to my BitChute channel, watch The Bleeding Edge. You can see how the FDA, the CDC works in terms of injectables, in terms of fillers, anything that lives in the body, the pharmaceutical industry, as well as the implant manufacturing industry is huge. And so you'll see on there that they might have gotten one approval for one vaccine and one looked very similar to it. Nowhere near as similar to it as the COVID jab, but it looks similar enough where they'll just say, hey, it's passed, and they'll use it as a just in case thing because it's considered an emergency. So that's how they get around this stuff. So he's going to come back, you guys. I'm gonna, just keep talking here before he comes back on. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the germ theory versus the terrain theory. He's super frozen, so I'm not really sure what's going on. Maybe,
it's freezing every time I rejoin. It's insane. I've never seen this before.
This might be part of, maybe restart your computer. I have enough time where I can talk to them about germ versus terrain theory. I have an image on that too that I can share. So maybe restart your computer and just see what happens. Or like Paula just said, try to open up another browser. Maybe using, there's Brave, there's Chrome. I'm on Chrome right now. So while he's doing that, you guys, I want to talk about germ theory. Paula, I'm not sure if you can bring up, I have images on this, but I don't know how fast Paula can act on this on the fly of my version of terrain theory versus, and it's in my Warrior Cleanse module. So if you guys want my Warrior Cleanse for free, start with the free module. If you have not yet, go to dianekaiser.com/free-detox and get module 0 for free. When you do that, you'll see how what the germ theory versus terrain theory is. Germ theory is almost 100 years old at this point. In 1933 is when they started all of this. Back when they started the it was the Flexner Report, is also when the Freemasons started becoming very popular and very common. Also, a Jehovah's Witnesses church started taking over, which doesn't believe in Jesus. And so there's a lot of the Antichrist that's out there, and the Freemasons and their number 33 is all about this. When you look at the timeline, we're going to talk about Bohemian Grove too, which is all to do about the Freemasons today. And how did all these people come into power? I mean, if you look at the dollar, there's like a all-seeing eye on there, and that's satanic in of itself. It's a cloned version of how the Bible talked about God is from top down, and God is an all-seeing eye, but it's a cloned version of that. So anyway, germ theory, which Justin, is live back on here. So right now, Justin, we'll talk about germ theory and we'll go into the next video. So I'm glad that you're back so we can kind of segue. I've been covering, I know.
Sorry, I was like, this has never happened before. I think it might have been because I was on Safari and not Chrome. So,
yeah, could be. It's a browser thing, or it could be a controlled app thing. Who knows these days?
I'm so sorry, but
it's okay. I'll find a visual on this too, and we can hop between. I want to finish my thought on what germ theory is versus terrain theory, and I'm going to find an image to share across the screen. But let's talk about that, because that whole vaccine video, what is the takeaway that you just shared of that vaccine video and the behind the scenes? Because I just told them all about watching the documentary, The Bleeding Edge. Have you seen that one?
I don't think so, no.
It's totally up our alley, and it's really all about how things get approved, and them not doing any research on a specific vaccine or implantable device or pharmaceutical, but specifically the implant industry. They won't do the research. They'll say, this thing is similar enough to that thing, and we've done a little bit of research and studies on this that have passed. And so, yeah, we'll go ahead and put Esure, or we'll put mesh into somebody's body, and it destroys them and kills them. And then there's lawsuits, but then they still keep doing it. Mesh, Esure, there's certain implantable devices that were taken off the market, like mesh was taken off the market for certain things, but not all things. And it's just the destruction. And what we think would be a company, a 3-letter organization that does the studies and safety studies of these things, but they don't. So that's kind of where I took them from the video clip that I saw. But I'd love for you to elaborate on what that video means while I find the germ theory image.
Well, you make a great point, and it's relevant to my situation in the documentary. It wasn't actually in that little clip that we watched with Conwall, but there is a meeting that I did have with a vice president level, executive level person named Nicholas Warren, who is also featured in the documentary. It's not like from the horse's mouth, but there is corroborating evidence that I put into this documentary that shows that there was information that came from Nick Warren talking about how he gamed the FDA by like lying by omission, essentially, on the buffer system that was used for the emergency use authorization approval that occurred on October 26th of 2021 for the 5 to 11-year-old EUA approval, essentially, right? So, Diane, to piggyback essentially off of what you're saying, this is right up that alley because Pfizer approved a tris buffer formulation without actually doing the clinical trials for it. So they did the clinical trials for the PBS, phosphate buffer saline, at minus 80 degrees Celsius only storage temperatures, right? So that's where the formulation was used in clinical trials, and they then changed the dilutions for this clinical trial for the kids, for the 5 to 11-year-olds, with that minus 80 degrees Celsius formulation, not the one that eventually got approved. The tris buffer can be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius, but it can also be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius due to like the ease of use of the buffer system, right? So thinking about it logistically, you know, if there were viruses and all this other stuff, you know, if people were actually dying and we needed this vaccine, an ease of use thing in the sense of allowing the formulation, the vaccine, to be stored in a refrigerator versus a minus 80 degrees Celsius freezer is a lot more logistically able to be done on a worldwide scale. You know, so that's the reality of why it all played out like that, due to the logistics of, you know, pharmacies, hospitals, etc. All these, you know, walk-in places that were injecting the vaccine into people didn't have this minus 80 degrees Celsius freezer to store this technology. You know, so that's really the bottom line of the approval. But the reality is, you know, they're not following any rules, and they essentially, you know, I say Pfizer and the FDA came together with like a bioequivalence excuse that they could, you know, use this buffer system that has been in vaccines before. But, you know, then we get to the broad part of the conversation where all vaccines aren't safe or effective. I'm acknowledging that. It's just they also didn't, you know, follow the right steps by any means with this emergency use approval. You know, if they were going to do it the right way, they could have at least, you know, done the clinical trials the right way and shown, you know, their results.
But we needed it fast, like that video said. No, we didn't need it because there was never a virus that existed in the first place. I think this is a really important point. And yes, Paula, thank you. Justin's audio is better. So thank you for switching over the browsers. Paula's notes, you know, I don't know if you know much of a powerhouse our producer Paula is, you know, her little comments are, we tried to stop that EUA at America's Frontline Doctors in spring of 2021, but the judge blocked the TRO, the temporary restraining order. So, I mean, we've been trying to fight, and, you know, Attorney Todd Callender and his team, there's a lot of good warriors on the front lines that have been trying to block this stuff. People are still begging for vaccines. I want to show this because I myself have been harmed so much by Western medicine that I just see them as two heads of the snake. The caduceus symbol, like we talk about that a lot here, which is like, look at symbolism, right? Look at what a vector is. It has like a mosquito has a pointy thing, and it points itself and pokes the venom into you. So do ticks, so do insects, so do vaccines, so do needles. So the doctors have been trained to be the very venom injectors. They don't realize it, but Botox and fillers at this point, Ozempic. I mean, it's all the same concoction. We've seen that with the work that I've had in other, you know, people's show, or other people who've been on my show. You probably have heard of that too, Justin. You know, people like Dr. Anna and Dr. David Nixon and Lakita Columna, Clifford Carnahan. I mean, they've been all looking under dark field microscopy and seeing the same stuff, and all injectables, including dental and aesthetics. So you guys, it's all one the same right now. This is our version of waking up. I'm going to show this, and I'd love to hear your theory on this, Justin. So we've got germ theory and terrain theory. I'll just say, to explain my image here, germs cause the disease. In germ theory, germs are the things that cause the disease. And their solution is to vax and medicate the fish. And my version of that energetically is that's victim consciousness. I have compromised immunity. You make me sick. It's other people's jobs to fix me. You make me feel unsafe because you could make me sick. Like, that's called, to me, called PTFD, point the finger disorder, versus the other thing, which is there's an ICD-10 diagnosis that I coined for that one, Justin. And that's all the people, I would say, more of like the crazy people. And I don't do left and right, but a lot of people on the left are like, oh my God, it's your fault that I am this. No, it's nobody's fault. Like, you're creator of your own universe. The terrain theory is that you are creating your own universe. Diseases from a weakened immune system, which we contribute to, are not. Our version is, yeah, you just, you're sick, clean the fish tank, detox, get rid of the bugs, clean up your environment, get rid of toxic people who are parasitic vampires. Don't let people just inject you and not ask questions about what's in them. Terra means earth, which God made me as a self-healing temple. That's, to me, what terrain theory is. But I'd love to hear your model of that, because you worked in the industry where germ theory sells a lot of needles and helps them profit.
Yeah.
The things they prophesize to be untrue.
Yeah. I mean, coming from the industry of allopathic medicine, right? This is a great example. I mean, you got two snakes, on the what's this actually called, Diane? Sorry, boy.
Caduceus?
The crucius
Yeah, it's caduceus.
symbol. Caduceus symbol. Yeah, this is all over the medical industry, and it just symbolism, like you're saying, will be their downfall. It looks demonic, like when you have these snakes swiveling up this needle. That's what we're promoting to go into kids and go into at such a young age. We're putting aluminum, etc., all these heavy metals into literally kids 6 months of age that can't scream or shout like, "Mom, Dad, don't do this to me. I'm suffering from an ear infection because of that thing that you gave me last week." That toxic poison bomb is what I call vaccines, essentially. So yeah, that's my take on the whole thing. I think that terrain is really it's the one of the final levels of true awakening is understanding that you are and you are a product of your environment. What you put in, you get out. So people all the time, I'm friends with people who believe in viruses. It's not like I'm like anti like people who don't believe in that. It's just I keep to myself when it comes to it. Just I don't fully keep to myself, but people that don't pay attention to it, it's really hard to wake them up at this point. Like there are people that are not going to hold themselves accountable. Like, okay, I had McDonald's last week. I had Five Guys last week. I had, whatever fast food restaurant, like, and now I'm feeling kind of crappy a day or two later, or 3 days later. I wonder why. It's because you're not eating well. You're not getting sunlight. You're not experiencing the way our terrain is truly meant to experience this earth, So, getting to viruses not being real was one of the biggest humps for me. But once I got to it, I'm like, okay, the terrain is all I can really talk about because of how glued in to the vaccine industry I was for such an extended period of time and wanting to be a whistleblower. So with my experience at Pfizer, it really took actually, not having my story told by Project Veritas. That was one of the huge driving forces that turned me into a terrain guy, I think, because I was, it was just like question more things. I got to question James O'Keefe from Project Veritas's controlled opposition because they won't take this bombshell story that I'm giving them, and then it gets to like all of virology and like the cause of disease is literally that's force fed to us is completely fake, and that I wanted to cure diseases. That's really why I got into pharmaceutical sciences as my degree, right? And so once I really embodied that, there is no cure to any of these diseases with pharmaceuticals. It's actually the cause. I had to turn around. That's that, and so I turned all the way from germ theory to terrain theory within a matter of several months. It took like a month or so, I think, for me to really like wrap my head around it. But it's triggering. It's a triggering conversation.
It's triggering, and I like to look at like the metaphor of what the word trigger even represents. Somebody's got a gun to your head, and it's either going to be your ego's perceived death of what's been so familiar to you, which shatters your reality, and we're so resistant to change that we're afraid of waking up. Or the trigger could actually pull the trigger to kill that part of us that is attached to the head of the snake that lies to us all day long and feeds us propaganda so that we go beg for more vaccines or prescriptions for medications that we don't need. Like, you don't need high blood pressure medication. You don't need cholesterol medication. You don't need any of that bullshit. It's poison.
I know.
What you need is just to clean the tank, clean your fish tank. So I love that you just said, and that's a short time, Justin. You said like a month. So I want to like dig deeper into this.
Well, Diane, my thing is I was already questioning COVID entirely, you know, to the point where I said it was the flu rebranded. You know, I was like, there's no such thing as COVID. It's literally just the flu. And then a conversation with a like-minded friend, he was like, dude, viruses aren't real. And then I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then it wasn't even a month. It was literally like a couple of days where I really just dug into it. And it took me like a week to really fully embody that viruses are a complete hoax.
Yeah, it's like you were climbing to the top of the mountain where you find God. Like God is at the top of the pyramid. Like, yes, the all-seeing eye, not the Illuminati version of the all-seeing eye, but like the true God eye is at the top. You keep climbing to the mountain. If you are true truth seeker, you keep climbing to the top of the mountain and you keep looking down going, how did I ever believe that bullshit? Oh, that was a lie, you know, but then you just keep realizing there's more and more, and it gets easier to seek out truth because you really are seeking out God. That when you're seeking the truth, you're seeking out common law, you're seeking out God, you're seeking out beyond civil law, because civil law is, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But it does, when, like, to me, how truth feels is it comes over you and you go, oh my God, now it makes sense. And like all of this makes way more sense than this lie that there's a virus. But I mean, not to say that the work of Lisa McGee and Todd Callender, that they've been finding that a lot of these patents do exist, and they are, you know, toxins, they are bioweapons, but they are versions of like artificial parasites, nanoparasites, you know, vaccines that carry viruses, but it's in the form of other things that we think that they're not naturally occurring. They're a natural occurrence of detox. And that's a whole work of like Dr. Tom Cowan, what's his name? I can't see his name right now. I'll think of his name and I'll pull up a quote from him.
Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, Kaufman, but I'm thinking the other guy who is, I see his face right now. He's, but I can't see his name. Anyway, I love his work, but I haven't dove into it for a while. But I'd love you to go into the James O'Keefe story, because, you know, if somebody has the opportunity to really broadcast in a wide, like to a wide population what the truth is, but then they don't, to me, that's controlled up. To me, that is chicken shit. But I want to hear your version of it. So you went to James O'Keefe, you went to Project Veritas, which I think is like no longer from him being in the company. What happened when you tried to bring your message to him?
It's a heavy point in my life where I was working with Project Veritas journalists very closely, about 4 of them. You know, I worked really closely with, maybe 5, and there was a group chat that I used to communicate with them. And so they provided me this undercover equipment, right? And I, you know, agree to work with them. I said, yeah, let's do it. I never really, no, that's a lie. I had one interaction with James before I met with him fully in person. I started working in Project Veritas in early October 1st. And so then we already watched the Conwall footage, right? That was October 6th. There is the October 21st footage of the guy Ramin Davari that is also in the documentary. Paul, I don't know if we wanted to watch that or if we wanted to get to the affidavits, but that's a video I provided Paula, is Ramin's footage. And then with Ramin's footage, there was the October 20th date is really important, because Carrie Madej went on Stu Peters' show while I was a whistleblower source, still like working as a scientist for Pfizer, saying Project Veritas is working directly with a Pfizer scientist whistleblower. Stay tuned for all of this information to come out. So Carrie Madej did the whistleblowing essentially before the whistleblow, and then there was a whole charade that happened with the FBI. From my perspective, you know, from my opinion, the whole thing with the FBI kind of looks like a cover-up to point blank. You know, like that's the way I see it. That's my opinion. I'm not literally affirming that, but that's the way I see it. Is, you know, you had this viral video go, you know, with the graphene oxide and what we were witnessing with the shots going under a microscope, and then boom, we have this FBI raid happen like a week and a half later, you know, on top of all this footage that I have, you know, and that I'm willingly giving these journalists every single day. Like, I was working with them in person, one specifically working with in person, and giving this information to, you know. So the time I spoke with James O'Keefe prior to meeting him was when I was going to do this microscope expose with the journalist team. I got on the phone with one of the field ops guys, and then they were with James, gave James the phone, and James talked to me, and I said, "Hey, James, I'm going to do the craziest thing ever, basically, and I'm going to take these vials and put them under a microscope. What do you think?" And he's like, "Oh, like, we don't report on conspiracy theories," is what he said. And then I said, "Okay, like, what does that mean? Like, people are dying." And then, it was a short conversation. And then, I kept doing what I was doing. I was following God's law, God's work. I felt like I just had to expose this evil, and so that continues, right? We do the microscope expose, boom, FBI raids happen. And then I stayed doing what I was doing even after the FBI raid happened, like seeing James O'Keefe on Sean Hannity talking about this Ashley Biden's diary right after I had done this explosive thing with Carrie Madej and, Stu Peters was going viral. I'm like, all right, this is kind of crazy how I'm smack dab in the middle of all this. And, like, I'm just I have to pretend like, I'm dumb. I don't know. Like, that's kind of how I felt. And then I met James December 1st of 2021 after being told by the team at Project Veritas telling me, we can't release your story due to recording consent laws in the state of Massachusetts, as well as crossing state line issues with, the whole microscope thing. And then ultimately they said that the FBI raid itself was a huge reason why that they were not going to release this footage. And so that to me was just like the ultimate, like, gut wrench, the ultimate, rip someone's heart out moment where I didn't know what was going on with recording consent, this and whatever that, with state lines. Like, I didn't want to cross the state lines. They had me do that. Or I didn't even have, I gave them the microscope vials, right? So they crossed these lines, and I followed them, and they had agreed to do all this, so they were allowing state line issues that probably would have eventually, if this ever got into court, it would have went null and void in the sense of we're dealing with crimes against humanity here, so to overlook that, like crimes against humanity, people dying from this experimental toxic poison bomb that I worked on, to overlook that we're dealing with crimes against humanity and that there was nothing that could have been done in December with the issues that I was presenting with this story are real. Like that's the situation in the sense that this could have impacted hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. So I don't know. You tell me, Diane, like the recording consent issues and having the legal team also they fully knew what was going on with me as well. Like they were, in the documentary, one of the journalists I worked with, security, he literally said, "Yeah, the legal team knew everything that you were doing. We made some, they didn't say mistakes, but the context of what he was saying was that you're a whistleblower and that the legal team knew everything that you were doing, and then they still decided not to release your footage due to they were like trying to save their own butt, but when that happens, when you have an explosive story like mine and you spike it into the ground and then people find out a year, 2 years later, they certainly are paying attention to what I'm saying about recording consent issues, right? But this story really could have been life-changing for a lot of people in the sense that their parents would still be here, or their son would still be here. I've been DM'd many times already, and it breaks my heart each time I get one of these messages of just saying like, "Justin, that information that you had actually came prior to a vaccine mandate that forced me to ultimately take this vaccine, and now I'm suffering. I can't even walk, etc." That's real. So that's what I was expected to stomach too, Diane. Expect to, stomach this information. You are a full-blown whistleblower. You did all of this, like, I call it balls to the wall information getting is what I was doing. Like, really, I I was working another full-time job to expose all of this, and it all just got pulled out from under me like a rug.
You know, I think that God works in mysterious ways, and I think that this is a perfect way for people to see. Like right now, we are in just so much disclosure. Like truth is not rising to the surface; it is sprinting to the surface, and it's because of people like you. It's because of people like me, and it's also like I think that, you know, despite all of this, we were all intended to learn lessons from this to get us to wake up. And if we're not waking up from this or this interview, what's going to be enough to wake you up? Because I beyond what you said about people, you know, taking it because they had to, is a message that's even deeper than that. Who makes you do anything? If we're not answering to God, then who are we answering to, right? So I think it's a great way for us to wake up. And I'm of course I feel terrible for the people who are no longer with us. And I feel like there's a part of like our own awakening that somehow karma works itself out, and God is showing us these things so that we can all come together and rise. And like Paula said something on the chat, it's like, it's true. What they did with your story is called editing. And that's what I think that, you know, the people who are controlled off, that's what they do. And I'll share my story when it's appropriate. I know we have a ramen video that's coming up too, but look at everything. It's editing. There's gene editing. Yeah, I know, Paula, you're being facetious. Yeah, exactly. Everything is like they're pulling pieces and parts out of the truth so that it serves their narrative. And then they call the ones who are trying to share the total truth conspiracy theorists and crazy. If you think that Justin and Amir are crazy, I mean, you're probably watching this and you don't think we're crazy because you're on the same page as we are. But if you're being called crazy for that and you're still trying to wake people up, they're not wanting to, then move on. Move on. They're going to wake up some other way, and it might mean they need to get Bell's palsy or some sort of autoimmune disease. And if they still don't wake up, it's their own choice. So realize that too. We can't control what other people think, control what other people do, but controlled op is trying to do that. So is it appropriate to share the ramen video now?
Yeah, let's do that one. And then I think there's another one that we can hop over to.
Okay. Awesome. Let's cue that up.
The pharmaceutical formulation scientist from Pfizer, one of the head honchos of the COVID-19 formulation team. This clip was from October 21st, 2021. Just listen to what he has to say about the safety issues of the vaccine.
My mother called me 2 days ago and said that her therapist's friend told her that her friend took a booster shot and died like the same day, I think, in her bathroom. I don't know if it was Pfizer, but like...
The only booster shot so far is in Pfizer.
So, I mean, well, it must have been Pfizer. And I'm just like concerned that, like, I mean, she was relatively old. She was 77 apparently. But, I mean, it's kind of scary to me.
Well, that's the thing. It's just people die every day.
I think it's something that we should look into and make sure that the boosters are...
People are looking into it.
Yeah.
It's just not our job to look into that.
Yeah.
But there are people within Pfizer, all the political people.
Okay.
And the safety people.
Right.
There are people who are not only looking at that, actually, there are reports that come to Pfizer, zillions of them every day.
Zillions.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think Pfizer gets mad when they don't mandate it?
From a business perspective?
Yeah.
It's just like saying, you think the chips companies, they're going to get mad if somebody says chips is not good for you? Of course.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean...
They don't care if people just eat chips all day and die. Because their job is...
to sell chips.
Engineering it the way that I take... No, it's not even selling it. It's for me to take it, basically, right? Because otherwise I won't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So... you forget about those parts of business, basically. So
yeah,
they're engineering it specifically for me to take the next one.
Right.
So increasing my consumption and increasing my consumption, guess what? It's going to affect my heart, and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, I know.
Interesting conversation, right?
Zillions.
The zillions get me because, I mean, if he says millions, that's still bad. And then if he says billions, that's really bad. So what did he mean by zillions? And then the whole thing with correcting me when talking about this chip company metaphor was really interesting as well. Like he came up with, engineering it is the word that he came up with in a way to continue to take it when comparing chips, like straight up potato chips, to a vaccine manufacturer.
Right.
So it's not point blank he's saying like, and nobody's talking about that with people dying with in regards to the vaccine manufacturers, but there was the metaphor that he created with that whole conversation that he was trying to dance around the truth, and he like basically gave it to me in the sense of not point blank answering it, but I was like, oh, are people pissed when you don't mandate this? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's the way chip companies work, right? If you talk down on chips, like you're obviously a bad guy, so they don't like anti-vaxxers speaking truth, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say that I'm an anti-vaxxer. I would just say I'm a pro-truther. And I mean, that's the whole point, is like, what's in these things? Is that, are you ever going to expect, I always get really passionate on these shows, because when a psychopath shows you their true colors, believe them. And the entire Western medicine model has been created by the greatest psychopath of all, which is Rockefeller. Nothing else needs to be said. I mean, we see petroleum, plastic, poison, all sorts of things on people's urinary reports when I'm looking at their toxicology, people from all around the world. I don't know how much more people need to wake up. You don't need any of this poison. You just need a healthy terrain. And you have people like him who are just like comparing it to food, like just throwing it out there like it's. How do you compare vaccines to chips? Like, it's just a business model, right? I mean, when you were sitting there, what was going through you? Were you like getting angry, or did you really get what he was saying yet? Had you woken up yet?
I was definitely awake. Like, I mean, I'm always getting more awake, I suppose. I keep waking myself up more and more.
Yeah.
I definitely was pissed after he said that. The fact that it was obtained through this video and audio recording, and allowing me to go back into the conversation and hearing it again makes me a lot angrier than I was at the time. But the fact that I obtained this, and then it could have really made the world angry, to cause some actual change too. And James O'Keefe didn't want to release this information to the world. Goes to show, that he isn't exactly who he says he is, right? He talks about, there was this video that went viral of him recently about, him saying like, what is your price? If your price is not your life, then, then you are for sale. He literally has said that, and it's gone viral in a reel. Like, millions of people have seen this, and he released it like a week after I released my documentary. And it just goes to show you that he's doubling down, tripling down on why he won't answer why he went to Bohemian Grove to supporters. If supporters go on James O'Keefe's Twitter Spaces and ask him about Bohemian Grove, he's not going to answer. And in the beginning of this documentary being released, there was a wave of people that were getting into his Twitter Spaces and asking, and I think he's like cleaned up, like he has a co-host and everything, making sure that people are vetted, that probably don't follow me and things like that.
Okay, let's talk about Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Paula is asking a question too in the chat while I'm starting to queue up the conversation of Bohemian Grove, and I'll let you decide when it's appropriate to share the other couple videos that you have teed up. Bohemian Grove, you guys, if you've never seen that is a really powerful way to wake up and see what like a psychopath convention looks like. That's probably the best way I can describe it. And that these powers that ought not be, but we are feeding with our mindset and mental tethers, that anytime you say I have to do something, you are in a prison. You don't have to get a jab ever again. I mean, I've flying to Dallas a couple weeks ago. I sat next to this really funny Black dude, and I was like, "Yo, are you racist?" And I told him, "Listen, I'm racist because I like to drive fast cars." And he like lost his mind. And so I just like, I hate all the lies about what should separate us, like man to woman, you know, adult to child, religion to religion, politics. It's all so dumb. Let's laugh at it. And if you can't laugh at it, you're in a prison. So he said, I had to get the vaccine because of work. And I'm like, psh, and I smack him across him. I did it in a loving way. I smacked his cheek and I was like, what? You don't have to do anything. Who made you do that? And what was your mindset about why you had to do that? And if you didn't, what would that mean? If you don't have people in your life that are not challenging you this way, they're enabling you rather than empowering you. So Justin's going to talk about Bohemian Grove next and how we got so programmed and psyoped and hypnotized into this hell with these mental tethers that we have to do anything. And it is a literal hell on earth. So is it a good point right now, Justin, to segue over to that?
Yeah, it's a good video. It's called The Dam Breaks, I think.
Cool. And then, yes.
What did you do with that Pfizer investigation? And again, this kind of has your signature all over it. I mean, it's a bold, strong move, right? That takes, you know, some, what do you call it? Testicular fortitude, right?
Yes, testicular fortitude.
Talk about what you did and what you need, maybe the ethos you need to have in your organization to do what you did.
Well, Jordan, you know, Walker was a Pfizer executive and a brave young man came to me some time ago, a year or two ago, and wanted to do something. He's the one who recorded Walker. Brave, very proud of him and how far he's come. Doing this sort of work is not easy.
I asked Robert, how can this be that there wasn't a whistleblower, that this had to come out in your video? How come it wasn't a whistleblower?
Well, this is James. Thanks. I think you're dead on point. Is that the dam breaks eventually in media, and the information dam has to break. And this is also some information. The person that recorded this worked for Pfizer. The man, our person who recorded this, came from Pfizer. So in some regards, that there have been whistleblowers, just ones you don't know about, that have been steadily investigating and reporting on this for well over a year.
You know, he's like, yeah, like in the real Pfizer whistleblower, you know, like you said. I'm like, how are you gonna come at me?
You're a pretty strong guy, man. I have to give you credit. You're stronger than me. I don't know how you deal with it psychologically.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
I went to this Bohemian club and it's upset people. So I just wanted to hear from you and kind of take your temperature and see how you're feeling, see how you're doing, like what's going through your mind.
James, I mean, how did you even get invited there? And like, it's the most powerful secret society in the world.
To unpack.
Whoa, what a bold question, Justin. This is what I mean. You just go straight to it. I love it. Okay. Before we get into that cliffhanger, because I do want to know the answer to that, Paul, can you cue up the prison bars? Because I want Justin to comment on that. It was part of the topic that I was just sharing. I made this, Justin, years ago. Just even before COVID happened, this was all coming to me. God always speaks to me before something happens in prophecy, and I break it down. So this is what I refer to when I talk about anytime we're in a prison, it's because of our programming. So what do you think about this? What does this image say to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I'd say that we're all programmed. You know, that's the reality of everybody's situation. We're all programmed in one way, shape, or form, and now we're going through the motions of like unprogramming or deprogramming ourselves. And it takes a lot for someone to want to, deprogram themselves essentially. Or, if you look, look at the movie The Matrix, it's a great metaphor example that, a lot of people use in the sense of unplugging yourself from the matrix and realizing that you were programmed and you have been programmed this entire time. And then, the programming essentially is what wakes you up to the program in a way because of how ridiculous it gets. So like my parents, they're both programmed in one way, shape, or form. Maybe my dad a little bit more than my mom in some ways, but our peers, they certainly help form our thoughts. Physicians from off rip, you're literally getting injected out, right when you're brought into this world, you're injected with foreign chemicals. That's all part of this programming, whether you're a parent or whether you're the kid that's being inflicted upon. And then positions at jobs, pop culture, etc., politics is all theater, is the way I look at it, in the sense of especially pop culture, the press, politics, etc. And even, there are some great preachers out there who are able to help their audience turn to look within, which is really where you find God. But there are some preachers who have no idea and are completely programmed and are like, God is this imaginary person in the sky who is, dictating everything. Like, no, there's a creator, and that's the way I look at God, is the creator created all of us, and we're all gonna have to meet who created us one day in one way, shape, or form. I don't fully know how it's gonna happen, but God's watching. The creator is watching all of us right now, as we are his creation.
Wait, you mean we're not just an accident that was just made from like the Big Bang Theory that CERN is trying to replicate? Oh, wait, sorry. We're not just an accident.
No, we're definitely not an accident. That's
oh God. Okay, Justin, thank you for that. I anytime you hear yourself anointing, or I should say pedestalizing anything from those 10 P's as somebody who knows more than you or that you should follow. I hate the word followers. I have followers on social media. I'm like, basically you have a cult. I like to say I have warrior colleagues. You guys are all my friends. You're not my freaking followers. I'm not like a guru. Anyway, I hate that ego nonsense. It's just funny to laugh at though. So back to the Bohemian Grove. Okay. I just pulled up some funny quotes from Bohemian Grove, and I heard this really funny one. Example was President Richard Nixon's comment from a May 13th, 1971 tape recording talking about upper class San Franciscans. He said, the Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, hello politics, one prison bar, is the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine with that San Franciscan crowd. I know there's a lot that has changed with Bohemian Grove since then, but I've just seen videos and I'm like, okay, well, Alex Jones did like a whole videoing of it. I don't know what you see on that, but I'd love to hear more about James O'Keefe having gone there, because whenever I hear somebody going there, people will say, oh, well, they're just being there. They're just there like you were at PFIZER. Well, oh, James is, Justin's a bad guy because he was at PFIZER. Well, is it the pathway that you use to wake up? Well, James is there at, Bohemian Grove. Maybe he's just there to wake up. You know what I mean when people start to build these stories about why somebody might be there. So I'd love to hear your story about what this grove is and why was James O'Keefe there?
Well, the only person who can really answer that question as to why James truly went is James, and he refuses to actually address it. But from my insider, position that I was in prior to James leaving, I had uncovered that James was invited and he was going. For what reasons, I had no idea, and there was, backstory is that James even put a poll, like a poll in our Microsoft Teams channel while I was still at Project Veritas, right? Because I went to O'Keefe Media Group shortly after this, because James, left PV and now he's at OMG. At PV, he's like, should I go to Bohemian Grove? Asked the whole company, yes or no. And like 90% said no. Like, why would you do that? And then there was like the 10% that was like, oh, you should go and investigate them. So that's that would have been really cool if James went to go investigate the Bohemian Grovers, but he went to go hang out with them and apparently get business funding. He was calling this before he went. I have this is all in the documentary at Project Whistleblower, found at justintegrity.net if you haven't seen it yet. It is all in there where James goes, I won't have access to my phones. I'm going to be off grid. He was at this, he called it an all gentlemen's like business retreat essentially. And it was during the final week of the encampment that we know happens with Bohemian Grove. They meet the same 2 weeks every single year and they call it the Midsummer Night's Dream or something. I don't know exactly, but Midsummer's Dream is really what this 2-week encampment is. So James was a guest for the final week. So he went apparently for business funding purposes. And so, I thought it was really suspect. And as a journalist, right, I'm an investigative journalist working for the king of investigative journalists, like self-proclaimed king of investigative journalists. And, people like Alex Jones and, all these people at InfoWars and all these people in the MAM that I call it. The MAM or MAMIC is mainstream alternative media. And then the MAMIC is industrial complex, right? Because all these people are part of this same network of like the same narrative. They push the same BS out there, right? Whether it's truth or not truth, half truths, etc. They're really all pushing the same nonsense that's really fear-based propaganda from a big 40,000 foot step back is the way I look at it. So and what you were saying earlier, Diane, is that I don't necessarily fit these people's narratives. I was a PFIZER whistleblower, so I fit certain parts of their narrative, right? Like the whole vaccine microscope thing where Carrie Madej and Stu Peters, that happened and that saw millions of views, right? But then, boom, I wasn't able to tell my whistleblower story, even though, because it would have destroyed the vaccine agenda, which is ultimately what is pretty much being hidden by this MAMIC group, this right-wing alternative media group. They're trying to suppress the terrain theory ultimately, from my perspective, from really growing in people's minds, because that is where the fear comes in. The viruses come in, all of it. They are still pushing ivermectin. They're still pushing COVID treatment, all of this. And it's all fear-based propaganda, so this group of people at the Bohemian Grove, James going to Bohemian Grove and being connected to high up billionaires, or at least millionaire level people, at this all gentlemen's retreat, where it's a theory at this point, that hasn't fully been proven, but there are testimonies that bring this theory to light that there is a lot of like child endangerment and trafficking and things really dark that are connected to Bohemian Grove itself, and so, I mean, to even add to that, there was this YouTuber recently, right after James actually had went, he snuck into the Bohemian Grove. His YouTube name is Dancer1. He snuck into the Grove twice within the past year. And one of them was actually for a really long extended period of time, like 2.5 hours of footage he published. So I can only imagine how long he was there. And there's people who have examined this footage and said that there was a morgue there that he like stuck his phone in and got pictures of a morgue, and then he had to leave because he literally, you can hear him say it smells like crap in there, so that's the situation we're dealing with Bohemian Grove, is that it's one huge secret, and that James was invited there, and now he won't even really address it if questioned on it.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a lot to throw at you, but
No, it's okay. I think people can do their own research on what Bohemian Grove is. It's like George Carlin said, it's a big gentleman's club, and you ain't in it. And anybody who is hiding behind that is probably in it. and anybody who isn't speaking truth and has courageous messages to share is probably a part of it, or is controlled op. I'll share a little version of my controlled op, which I've never talked about before, and I'll just make it really brief. But a couple of years ago, actually, it was probably 7 years ago at this point, I started really getting the word out about Botox. And Botox is extremely toxic, and it's the most toxic substance known to man. Another vector, right? Another vector harming toxin that was used in the Gulf War to paralyze troops, to make them easier to trap and to trace and to terminate whatever they needed from them in the army. So anyway, it somehow made its way into Western medicine, as has most of the toxins that are killing people these days, either rapidly or slowly. They were in the war, and then they became part of medicine. Okay, you guys can make that connection. Anyway, years ago, I was hashtagging, Botox and how damaging it was, sharing symptoms of people who were struggling with it. I myself got poisoned, and I got banned and blocked from using the hashtag. And then I started getting all kinds of warnings on Instagram. I was asked to speak last year and publicly to over 1,500 doctors, and presented on how toxic Botox is. There's a woman who loves to just be the only person that is allowed to talk about Botox being damaging for us. And she reached out to me with a freaking cease and desist that I couldn't talk about it because she was the only person that could. And anybody who is trying to position themselves as the guru, as the hero, is no different than Fauci. And if they're trying to silence the truth and nobody else can speak about it, then they're probably controlled op. So this woman is crazy. She does it to a lot of other people. And it is the model, it's the formula of controlled op to say, I'm the only person that can play God. And you're right, Paula, the truth cannot be owned. So this is no different than what you kind of are experiencing before truth. I mean, I don't know. Is that kind of how you felt with James O'Keefe too, or with the work that you've been doing, just trying to get the truth out there, Justin?
Well, yeah. I mean, heart-to-heart situation is I was in such a difficult situation, like where I am this young guy, Pfizer scientist who wanted to be a whistleblower, right? And truly was doing whistleblower activities, like that's, and so my information should have been protected by certain whistleblower protection laws, right? Whether we're in common law or maritime law, it's really, we can argue about like what jurisdiction I'm in, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it all falls under spiritual law of do no harm. Who was I harming? If you're saying that I was harming somebody, I didn't harm Conwell. I didn't poke her any, with any of this stuff. It's just, this is what she said. And from an expertise level, this information could have saved people, bottom line, and so do no harm. The law do no harm is something that I live by and, was truly living by as a whistleblower, in the sense of I was willing to literally die, and I still am at this point based off of, how I've been living, it's not like anything's changed, but like I've risked my life doing all this. I'm going after Pfizer, and I'm going after the alternative media, calling them controlled opposition, essentially, at this point, and I'm publicly willing to have a conversation with James about all of this. I'm publicly willing to talk about the situation that played out, but he doesn't want to talk to me because he wants to like protect, his other colleagues that I guess worked with me at the time that are in the documentary. I laid it all out there, and it was a lot because, Diane, you're saying like James O'Keefe comes across as this person essentially that, you want to trust and give this information to. And, he is somebody that does wake people up to a point, though. It's really to a point. And then Alex Jones is to a point. And then, or whoever, name drop whoever, we're all on that awakening process. And, for me, once I got past the viruses aren't real thing, and then, participated even in the directed evolution story, which to me was dangerous for the world, where, it's Jordan Tristan Walker saying viruses are, viruses are being mutated by Pfizer, basically, and we're like preemptively making vaccines for them. I saw that story. James saw it as this amazing story of, oh my God, they got 50 million views on Twitter. Like, this is unreal. And for me, it was like, okay, this is the exact opposite of my truth, in the sense that I come from a terrain perspective. This is actually taking viruses and saying that they're more dangerous, and it's affirming gain of function, or gain of fiction, as I like to call it. And it's
Wow.
all just against my truth. So I really feel that I was manipulated and played and betrayed during the last 2.5, 3 years, and like even being offered a job, as a whistleblower, I was offended, but I also I knew I was naive, because I gave all the information to them. So I had this like pivotal moment in my life where I'm like, okay, am I going to go investigate the investigators? Am I going to go stay at Pfizer and work here another, even though I don't want to, and then, so I saw the best of both worlds getting out of Pfizer, to go investigate James and Project Veritas and see what they were like. And there was always just this taste in my mouth that didn't sit right, because I knew that there was an injustice done to me as a Pfizer whistleblower, which in turn is an injustice done to the rest of the world, because of the information that could have been presented at the time that I do present in my documentary.
Yeah. Speaking of the documentary, you guys, I think at this point we can start wrapping up and recommend that you go watch the documentary. Before we do, I'd like to show, and Paula, I don't think we've shown yet the investigation and prosecution of those individuals responsible. Have we shown that yet? I'd like to show that one and have you explain a little bit more about the affidavit.
Oh yeah, let's touch on the affidavit.
Yeah, before we wrap up.
Okay, so the affidavit is, this was sent to the Office of Crimes Against Humanity or the International Criminal Court for Crimes Against Humanity, to the Netherlands, to New York City, and I also sent this to Senator Ron Johnson. And I essentially put all factual information from my human experience over the last 3.5, 4 years into this documentary, not into this documentary, into this affidavit. And I cite my documentary in this whole affidavit as well, and I cite things like the end of COVID, for example. It's a docuseries that goes and explains why germ theory is a complete hoax and why terrain model is king, essentially. So I became friendly with Alex Zeck and Mike Winner, the producers of the, so I cite that. I cite Dr. Sam and Mark Bailey's work in here, where they have 2 great papers. One of them outlining the entire COVID-19 fraud and standing on virology as a reason as to why this is all a fraud. So it's really a huge document that I put onto my website, and I sent these affidavits to these people expecting a response. And I have not heard anything back from the criminal court or Ron Johnson. So I'm at this point where, I'm doing all these interviews like full time right now, but I'm getting ready to make my next moves in the sense of like what's next for me as a Pfizer whistleblower, as an alternative media whistleblower, etc. I don't know if the affidavit's working, so maybe I need to, straight up, like I'm, I'll say this under my breath, but I mean, I'm thinking about going to Pfizer in person at this point and having them acknowledge my story. It's an idea, at least, in the sense of, pulling these vaccines off of the market is my goal from doing all of this, and like vindicating anyone who's vaccine injured that is willing to admit that they were wrong and repent. Obviously, those people deserve to have, validation and be vindicated as I don't like using the victim card like you were saying, but these people were victims if they didn't know better, and now are willing to admit that they're wrong. Like, we can all unite, come together, and move forward as a species, as men and women on this earth. So I think that this affidavit, it's an affidavit of truth, and it should be used for investigations I guess, for crimes against humanity. But as we both know, Diane, these courts aren't exactly, you know, uncorruptible either, right? They're entirely uncorruptible, and it's you know, a huge question as to, you know, is anything really going to get done in a court system, you know, or is it really just going to be a mass awakening process that basically acknowledges, okay, we're really not going to get the answers that we want from the system itself, so we kind of just have to say bye to the system and create a new system, you know? And that's, you know, it's a tug and pull with, you know, or whatever the metaphor is for that. But, you know, it's a tug of war essentially, whether, you know, we're living in a death cult system, you know, so are they really going to acknowledge this whistleblower being done by me? So I'm not sure, but, you know, we'll see what happens, and stay tuned, as, you know, I am, you know, still trying to get on my feet essentially from this whole whistleblower experience. But my mission is, you know, starting at justintegrity.net. I'm looking to continue doing investigative journalism in the form of podcasting once I'm, you know, once all my interviews really die down, because, you know, it takes a lot of energy out of me to like do all this talking, and, you know, it's like a full-time thing, really. You know, I was at a point where I was doing interviews like 4 a day sometimes, you know. It's gotten to the point where it's overwhelming, and then, you know, now I'm like, okay, like I'm a whistleblower who had to share all this information without, you know, James. Like, I wanted to give this bombshell story to the king of investigative journalism, and I wasn't good enough for him, you know. So now I'm at the point where, like, I have to embody that I am worthy, you know, to continue to tell the truth and seek truth and be a truth teller, you know. So that's what I'm embodying, is being a truth teller, you know. So that's what justintegrity.net is. It's going to be a truth telling platform, in the form of investigative journalism, and also in the form of like a healing and wellness platform, where I'm going to, you know, look to use, you know, certain products are good, right? Like there's the Beamer X39 patches, ozone therapy are, you know, a few things that I really resonate with, that have, you know, done great things for me, you know. So I'd like to share those with my audience as well. And so, you know, I'm very new to all this, and, you know, the influencer status and putting myself out there, you know, so bear with me in getting my mission fully up and running. But you know, I'm really excited to see where I can take this, and
I love it.
my mission to grow. So thank you for having me on, Diane.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think, just like to Paula's point, none of these big cases have been won anyway. Like the case against Lloyd Austin was not taken up by the Supreme Court. So I think that we're barking up the wrong tree. We're fighting with a corrupt system that's not going to listen to us. And I think it's kind of like trying to scream at a partner or a parent or a preacher or a politician or any of those P's and say, like, listen to me. Like, you just said something right there, which you said, I wasn't enough for James O'Keefe. And so where are you enough? And like, I think that's like, the enough is like not the right question. You're probably more than, you were probably too much for. And so, you know, where are you welcomed? And that is, you know, having your own platform where people are like, not only do I want to receive truth, that I'm a seeker of truth. And that is truly, like, curiosity is the starting point, which you will find truth because you're seeking and you're knocking. God says that when you knock, you will find it. And so you're on that path. As you know, if you're a curious student of life, I always believe that you're going to find the truth no matter what. And, you know, Justin, you have a home here. I actually coach and certify people who want to become wellness advocates and certified detox experts, with not just products, but a whole lifestyle, and understand, like, what is poisoning us, what is damaging us. And, you know, as a doctor myself, I've seen this. I've been doing this for 15 years, where I partner with people like you just to get the word out there. And you should be rewarded for helping people with the honest truth, and having it be from an authentic space, and not just from prioritizing profits, but being the prophet, prophet, which is to be the seeker, to be the curious student of life, and to be so courageous to get this out there like you have. So you're already on the path. I don't doubt that. Like I said, you have a home here. We can do this anytime. I know that to really be a speaker out there, it does take a lot out of you. You know, Paula, my producer, gets to hear me like, like I'm having to say too much to share. There's not enough people listening. You know, it's so, you know, here we are. And
no, but it's important. I feel called to do the interviews because I know it's a new audience every single time. You know, I mean, sure, there's maybe a handful here or there where it overlaps, but you know, I mean, your audience is probably new to hearing my story, so I'm really grateful that you're giving me exposure to your audience. And for those in the audience, check out Project Whistleblower at justintegrity.net, or if you want to, it's also, I have my Rumble, my BitChute, Unite Live, Clout Hub, all of these accounts are linked right under the video that's embedded into Project Whistleblower, or into justintegrity.net. And I know the name doesn't match Project Whistleblower, and then you have the network, but it's cool. People like it, so you know it's sticking.
I don't know if I've met such a young whistleblower in the midst of this. I mean, it truly, somehow you got thrown into this, like you found yourself like me, like you're in the middle going, how did I get here? Like, how did I, why are you not choosing for me to see this?
Diane, I'd love to connect offline and, you know, learn more from you on your journey and going through ND and all that. Cause I'm not that I'm struggling. It's just, you know, I'm at the point where, you know, I went through all this sciencey stuff, allopathic medicine route. And now I'd like to get into healing and, you know, the wellness and understanding the holistic routes of healing. And, you know, I'm not sure if I want to go to ND school or whatnot, so maybe I can pick your brain a little bit offline and figure out you know, how I can continue to allow my mission to impact people. So
love that. I would love to support you. I mean, it's just like that, and I applaud you for being curious of what it's like. Okay, we learn from what's not, and then moving into what's next, and then what's nature, and like then we're on the path. So you're a beacon of light. Thank you. Absolutely, Justin. Let's talk offline. I'm going to hop off. I actually have to get ready for another webinar tonight where I'm presenting for our non-toxic beauty school launch, because that's the other thing that's killing us is beauty. Women are dying to be beautiful. Some men are too. So we're both in the realm of encouraging people to run away from the snakes in the form of the injectables, in the form of, we know, it's venom in these vectors. And hopefully some of them awaken you to the truth, not to transcend into the death realm, because that is, you know, the great calling. As you know, my friend Amanda Vollmer, you on her show, we talk about that too when she and I talk about shows. This is the great calling, and I hope that you guys all choose to be part of the awakening rather than the transcending to another dimension. So thanks again, Justin, for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here today. And for everybody who's listening, please share this episode far and wide. Give Justin the respect that he deserves. Give him a round of applause for doing the work that he's doing. And then also for yourself for even being here on the show today. You guys are seekers and speakers of truth. And if you want to transcend toxins in any way that we can help, we give away our the module 1 of the Warrior Cleanse and a whole bunch of other things for you guys, where you can go to dianekaiser.com/transform and see anything that's there. Talk about binders to bind toxins, get them out of your life, dental work, and to do it right, to get dental anesthetics out of your life and to not be poisoned by them or clear them after you've been doing dental treatments. I can go on and on. Join our VIP group for just $1. All of that is dianekaiser.com/transform. Check out Justin's work, and we'll see you guys all on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If this episode really tugged at your soul and you're ready to have your personal breakthrough, we would love to have a heart-to-heart with you to get you crystal clear on 3 things. What do you want? What's standing in your way? And how do we get you to your soul goal in the fastest time possible? Visit my site, dianekaiser.com/call to schedule your free 1-hour connection session with one of our warriors to map out exactly how you want to look, feel, and live. We've helped thousands of warriors just like you all around the world free themselves from the symptoms and suffering they never thought possible. And you just might be our next success story. Talk soon.